USTEC. Now, on the USTEC, we have been having a choppy situation so far this week on the USTEC, though we had some buy positions, we had some sell positions as well, but this position hasn't lasted for a long time before we were taken out of the position at every point in time. So let's see what happened since the beginning of the week on the USTEC so that we can have a background knowledge of where we are coming from as we plan to project what our expectations will be like for the New York session today. So the first thing that happened this week was the fact that price has been very bearish, as we saw our price had continued to trade below that key level we identified at the beginning of the week, which is situated at the $13,000 level. And since the beginning of this week, we have seen a situation where price had consistently respected that trend, that line, where sellers had come in immediately at the right time to negate all bullish attempts in this market. So we saw the week started with a situation where we had the resistance line here had a 12,985, and then we have this support line here at a 12,930. And with this whole setup identified at the beginning of the week, we were looking forward to either a breakdown or breakout of that structure for a trading opportunity. And one thing we said here is if price action breaks out, we have a buy stop order above that structure. And if price action breaks down, we are not having a sell stop. Instead, we want to wait for further confirmation, which will come in the form of a retest of structure before we join. And the reason why we were waiting for a confirmation was simply because of the strong demand zone here, as we need to see presence of sellers in this market, giving us a clue of how they are gradually gaining some momentum in that market. So we had a buy position initially at first, but this move did not last long. So after price moved about 60 pips in our favor, we moved our stop loss accordingly, locked in some profit, but unfortunately for the buyers, we were taken out of that position. And on Tuesday, we begin to see signs that selling momentum is gradually coming in. So we sold here at the breakdown of that demand zone here, and price action moved on that first position on Tuesday with about 170 pips. Then we had a second position triggered at the below the 12,800, moving about 80 pips thereabouts before we saw this bullish momentum which took us out of this position. And during our live session yesterday, we acknowledged the fact that where were we during the live session? I think we were around here during the live session yesterday, where we saw this bearish move all the way to the downside. And we said if price action breaks down, retest the structure, we will begin to add more position. But unfortunately, we were taken out of that position. And since then, we have been witnessing this old choppy situation, which could be attributed to the economic event we are expecting today, that is the GDP. And also there is this speculation across the market as regards the interest rate decision, which is coming up next week, May 3rd. And majority are thinking that the interest rate will be increased by 25 basis points, which will definitely favor a bullish traction in the dollar. So there is still a doubt in the air. Hence, we have been seeing this whole consolidation phase happen. And in fact, it is going on all the major pairs that we have been monitoring so far this week. So at this point in time, it is quite reasonable that we remain very, very patient at this particular point in time before jumping into any trade here. Now, before we go into the details of what to look out for today, I would like us to scale up into the daily time frame. Let's see what is really happening from an holistic point of view, and this also will favor those who are not part of our live session prior to this one. So in that regard, we shall be scaling up into the daily time frame, where we want to see things from an holistic point of view, and then use whatever structure we identified here to project what our expectation will be like for today. Now, what I will be doing here on the daily time frame is to focus on trading activities since the beginning of this year, and we can see how we had a very strong demand zone at the 10,500 level. This was where price action started this year, and since then price action has been finding higher highs and higher lows in this market. And to further emphasize the strength of the buyers in this market, we have this ascending channel figured out after we connected the series of higher highs, giving us a resistant line of that ascending channel, and then we also connected the series of higher lows here, giving us the support line of the ascending channel. Now things got a little bit more interesting during the beginning of this month, as we saw price action break out of that key level at the 12,800 mark, which happens to be the first time price action will be breaking out of the structure in the last 5 to 6 months in this market. As you can see, this area has been a strong selling niche. At every point in time buyers try to break out of the structure, we saw our sellers negated that bullish attempt. Now at the beginning of this month, let me zoom in so that we can see things more clearly. So at the beginning of this month of April, we saw the breakout of the 12,800 mark for the first time, and we were hoping that this move will continue or will incite a very strong bullish momentum to the upside. But if you look at what has been happening in the last 2 to 3 weeks in this market, you will see that the bullish momentum appears to be reducing, as we can see how the $13,220 mark area has continued to negate every attempt by the buyers to break out of that structure. And with this whole situation we have here, we have a very insightful flat channel here, which further emphasizes the indecision in this market, as price action has continued to juxtapose between the 13,220 and the 12,800 since the beginning of this month, giving us a clue of an indecision. Hence, we need to be very, very careful here in order not to miss out on the potential trading opportunity. So this week so far, we have been on a bearish momentum actually, which at one point in time broke down to 12,800, which is a sign that sellers have the tendency of breaking down that structure. So for me, for this week, I'm still thinking that bearish momentum is still a very possible future in this market, as we look forward to price action breaking down to 12,800. And our duty here today is to see how we can catch that move earlier than the breakdown happens, so that we can maximize the profit we want to be making on this one. So when we scale down to the lower time frame here, we want to look out for structures that will support a bearish momentum, so that we can catch that move right in time. But another thing we should also take into consideration here is the fact that, remember, this level has been a very strong buying niche in the past, and we are not going to be blind to the potentials of the buyers too as well. So we are also going to be looking out for structures that we want to see in this market that will project and give us the confidence to be able to buy the USTEC. So with that being said here, let's scale back down into the 1 hour time frame. As you all know right now, we are well equipped with the information we have on the daily time frame to make a well-informed decision when we scale down to the lower time frame. Now scaling down into the 1 hour time frame, we want to see how price action has been reacting to that our important key level at the 12,800. So the first thing I will do here, if we look at the structure and considering how price action had been playing out since last week, at least in the last 7-8 days now in this market, it is quite obvious that price action has been bearish. And when we connected a series of lower highs since last week Tuesday, you will see that we have this bearish trend line. So this trend line was figured out at the beginning of the week, and we agreed that we will continue to use this trend line as our yardstick for trading activity. And what this simply means is that if price action still remains below the trend line, we would have no choice than to look out for selling opportunities in this market. The only reason we'll be buying the USTEC in this market is if price action ever breaks out of that trend line to the upside and we see buy pressure resume above that structure. This is when we can be thinking of buying the USTEC for this week. And in fact, if you remember, we have the 12,800 mark, which is our key level on the daily time frame. So I would like to acknowledge that structure here. So where is the 12,800 at this point? Okay, the 12,800 mark is around here. So just right below that demand zone, this is where the 12,800 is. So let's acknowledge that quickly so that we can have a visual understanding of what we are talking about here. So we have the 12,800 right below that demand zone there. So I will take this one out and then we acknowledge this one. Oh, 12,800 is still so okay, this 12,800 here, sorry about that. This is the 12,800 here, so it's still far away. So this is the structure we saw on the daily time frame. So I will just readjust this one back into that demand zone, which is at the 12,890. All right, sorry for the mix up there. So here we go. Now, what we are going to be doing today is this. So as long as price action remains below the bearish trend line, we'll have no choice than to look out for selling opportunities. Now, what do we want to see on this chart that will make us to sell the USTEC for today? Well, like we said, as long as price remain below the 12,890, which is also below the trend line, and if we go to as far back as the beginning of this week rather, where we have this demand zone sitting at the 12,890 here, and we saw the breakdown of that demand zone happen on Tuesday. And from a technical standpoint, whenever we have a breakdown of structure, we normally expect price to come back, do a retest of that level to incite a trend continuation. So personally, I want to see price action drop back below that demand zone, which is at exactly the 12,890. And remember, we are not jumping in right away with a sell stop order, as we still need some confirmation to happen. So immediately price action drops below the 12,890, we shall scale down to our lower time frame, like our 10 minutes, 5 minutes time frame, to look out for further confirmation to join the move. So what we want to see on the lower time frame is a retest of structure, where we start seeing signs that buyers are finding it difficult to break above the 12,890, and this will reflect on the chart in the form of selling pressure like this, breakdown, retest, then we could join that decline to the downside. Then a further breakdown of the 12,800, which is our key level on the daily time frame, will definitely welcome more positions in that regard. And the 12,720, which happens to be the lowest point price action has been for this week, also a breakdown retest of that level too, will be an opportunity to add more position to our existing trade. So I hope that we'll be on standby to catch this move when it happens. Now, in as much as we are looking out for selling opportunities here, that if price action stays below the 12,890, we look out for selling opportunities. We cannot ignore the potentials of the buyers in this market as well. Now, if we take into consideration what happened yesterday on Tuesday after the breakdown of that demand zone, you would have noticed that price action had transitioned to find higher lows in this market. Though we are yet to find a higher high, we found a higher low in this market. This could build up into a situation where a bullish momentum breaks out of that trend line. And you all know that whenever such breaks out happen, we'll still need some confirmation to give us a clue or insight into the build-up of the bullish momentum in this market. This market is a bearish momentum. At least in the last 1 week, it has been bearish. We really need a confirmation that will give us the clue that buyers have come to stay in this market. And this would reflect on the chart as a retracement back into structure, retesting either the trend line or the 12,890, which happens to be the demand zone at the beginning of the week, to give us a confirmation to buy the USTEC for today. So you can see how important the 12,890 level is for us for today. It demarcates the buyers and the selling pressure in this market at this point. So anywhere above the key level at the 12,890 would have broken out of the trend line to the upside, hereby giving us a clue that the trend line may no longer be strong enough to negate any bullish momentum in this market. And if that happens by pressure above the trend line, then we will have no choice than to look out for buying opportunity. But if a breakdown of the neckline of this 12,890 happens, then we are back within the seller's territory, looking out for selling pressure on our lower time frame to be part of the bearish move to the downside. So let's be on standby to catch any of this opportunity, as the 12,890 is going to be our center of focus during the New York session today. So if you have any questions regarding what I just explained so far, feel free to drop your inquiries in the comment section.